Today's guest on Adversity to Strength with me, Lee Freeman, is someone whose resilience and reinvention has inspired generations. Aston first captured the world's attention as the powerhouse lead singer of Bucks Fizz, enchanting millions with her vocal range and stage presence. But behind the glitter and pop success were personal battles navigating the pressures of fame, learning to trust again after betrayal, and finding her voice amid chaos. Jay's journey didn't stop at chart-topping hits. She reinvented herself as a solo artist, theatre performer, advocate for mental health, sharing raw honesty about anxiety, heartbreak, and the unwavering determination it takes to rise and fall. Through every twist and turn, Jay has forged a life rooted in authenticity, creative passion, and the courage to start anew. Today, she joins us to unpack that journey, from chart success and personal crisis to rediscovering purpose and power on her own terms. Jay, it's a privilege to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out to come on today.
Thank you for asking me. I like that build-up. I mean, thank you very much.
No problem at all. I'm glad you like it. Take us back to the beginning of your journey. Where did it all start for yourself?
I have to go back to my childhood, really, and because I learned so much from my parents who lived through the war. So that's always the ultimate adversity. And they would talk about it a lot. And my dad was a comic. He was in showbiz. So he came out of the army, and on the boat back from India, he met Kenneth Williams, who was known for the Carry On movies. So long story short, Kenneth introduced him to management and Dad wanted to go into comedy. You know, it was the ultimate antithesis of war. And he met my mum. Both of them were performers in a pantomime, but they would relay the harshness of what they had to live through. So I think I was in a way fortunate that obviously I could see, I mean, we weren't wealthy. Mum and Dad would struggle, but I could see that we were in a golden age in comparative to their age, to the time that they were teenagers. I mean, Mum slept on the tube floor most nights because she lived in Oxford Street in central London. So that gave me a background. And I think also I was very lucky that my dad was infectiously happy, you know, wanted to make you happy. So whenever there was struggles, he would just clown about at home and it would lift us, you know. So I learned a lot from my dad, who could literally have an audience spellbound, even if it's just like end of the pier comedy or whatever. Yeah. They did a lot of the good old days TV shows. And so I was brought up in that environment and I was always traveling around the country and I'd see a lot. If you travel with your work, you see a lot what goes on in the country. So, you know, where we would be in a bubble in Surrey, I would see what would happen up north and I realised I was privileged.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing to give you a balance. And then, I mean, I joined the band. I struggled a bit. My first adversity was I wanted to be a ballet dancer. And I kind of did so much ballet, I affected my knees and I had a really serious knee condition. I was in and out of hospital, in and out of plaster and physio and all of that. And I think that was the first time I learned that sometimes life just doesn't really go like you hope. So yeah. I wanted to be a ballerina at that point. I mean, I was a kid then, but I was quite good. And it was like my first realization that, you know, this isn't going to happen. As a result, when I went to theatre school and I wasn't really allowed to dance much, I got into singing, which of course literally was the door opener for me. I always took for granted I could sing. So then wind on a bit, I went to the audition for Bucks Fizz. There was hundreds of girls who'd auditioned. I actually got a private audition in a lady called Nicola Martin's front room. Auditioned while she was I think she was eating a doner kebab, I remember. Anyway, you know, they were, can you come back and do the harmony? So we went into the studio in Oxford Street, Air Studios, I think it was, and put down the harmony. And she gave me a cassette and they pretty much offered me the job there and then. And this was the song Making Your Mind Up. And it was like, is this going to be a hit? Is this going to win Eurovision? So my brother had been in the West End and my brother had done Eurovision the year before in a band called Prima Donna. And I wasn't sure, you know, because I'd actually carved out a life actually as a fitness instructor in Jersey, because a lot of my family live in the Channel Islands. So it was like, is this going to be worth, you know, am I just wasting my time? I took the cassette back and my mum and dad were having a party and played it to a cross section of people and they went nuts about the song. And I was like, yeah, maybe the song's got legs. So roll on, you know, we won the song for Europe and then we won Eurovision. And Mike Nolan, Cheryl Baker, Bobby G were the other members of the band. We won the competition in Dublin. And actually, from the moment we won, it was crazy for about 3 years. We were literally all over Europe, Germany, Holland, Belgium regularly, Australia, South America, never broke North America, but it was just, our lives were like a whirlwind. It was literally overnight success.
Do you think that's anything to do with you guys being tagged as the English or the British ABBA? Would that have had anything to do?
Yeah,
That
I
must
think
be a
there
lot of
was
pressure.
definitely, we were often called the British
How
ABBA.
do you feel about that?
I wish we
Because
had
that's hard.
things, but no, I mean, I obviously we'd all won Eurovision, and it was a similar two boy, two girl thing. And
Yeah,
I think that was kind of the identity and the costumes and the look and the happy songs, essentially, you know, and
yeah,
and there's songs about love and struggle and stuff, but essentially it was quite lightweight pop. So even that song became a hit in territories that didn't have the Eurovision Song Contest. It was just something that took off. So the
very,
power of music just launched us, you know, into
yeah,
another stratosphere, which any struggling artist could only hope for.
yeah. And then you've got The Land of Make Believe, which is a really good song, which is a brilliant song, you know.
Yeah, I think the lyric really struck with people because it worked for children. Obviously, we had a lot of kids following us, and we had a lot of grannies. You know, it was literally everyone has their own form of land of make believe, and I think that lyric and people when we do it, we just put the mic out and they just sing it. You know,
The,
they all sing along, and obviously making your mind up is the one that everyone remembers because of the silly skirt ripping.
the silly skirts. That's whenever you see like somebody's throwback, you're always going to go to Bucks Fizz, and you can see that the skirts coming off there as well, which is good, which is stands out, you know.
It was memorable, and it was a bit risque for 19.
So with because with like Bucks Fizz, you assume that it's all light-hearted and it's everyone's getting along because it's easy going, but it's
Yeah.
almost not like ABBA, but similar in certain way. That wasn't the case though. It seemed to be a lot of internal conflict going on throughout
Yeah.
that time.
Well, the band was made for Eurovision. So we were four
Really?
different people, different ideas, different backgrounds, different abilities. And on stage, it looked right. It worked as a group. But off stage, we were very different people, different ideas. Bobby was a lot older. Bobby was nearly 10 years older than me. I was the youngest. I was a teenager. Cheryl had done Eurovision many times before, so she was a bit of an old hand and great in the studio. Mike was in a band who'd done quite a bit of TV. And although I hadn't done much TV, I'd done a lot of live gigs. So I was very confident on stage, not so in the studio. And Cheryl was stronger in the studio. Bobby had done sort of working men clubs and pubs and clubs, and he'd been gigging. So I think we all had a lot of performance experience, but the personalities were clashing.
Yeah.
From early on, particularly, well, first of all, it was Mike and Bobby would clash, and then Bobby and Cheryl would clash. And so Mike and Cheryl were like really close. I being the youngest and Bobby being the oldest, we were like, we weren't on the same side, but we would agree generally more because it would literally be, you know, one would say black and the other would say white, and one would say yes and the other would say no, and it was silly. And I was the kid in the middle, often was the vote, you know, the one who'd made the decision. So there were stresses and it was stressful. The thing is with pop groups is you have usually 3 or 4 years of success.
Yeah.
And your record company and your management will push you out to every continent for that period of time to maximize the success of the band. And it's very intense. I mean, you go back to your room and you've worked all day, and then you've got 5 interviews with press or local pop magazines or radio or whatever. So it's very grueling. And although it all looks fabulous, and you do get carried along with the hype of how fabulous it is, oh, I'm a pop star. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And after a few years, it starts to really wear you down. Like 45-day tour with a couple of days off, and it's all over the country. You know, you're tired. You can do it when you're young, but you couldn't do it now, you know, at our age now. So it's just one of those things. It's the business, the industry is set up to maximize profits for the record company, and also people get very fed up with you very quickly. They're on to the next band.
Yeah, because I've often wondered that as a kid growing up, why bands never lasted, and they've had like brilliant albums and then they disappear. Is it just like there's a wind? I mean, you've got the ones that have been there for decades, you know, the Stones, them sort of ones. But do you think that you knew you've come from Eurovision, you've probably got a window, maximise it? Do you think? Did everyone kind of think that anyway?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the thing is, Andy Hill was a very good songwriter, and it is about the songs at the end of the day. If the song takes off, it will carry you. If the song doesn't happen, that's it. You can literally disappear overnight. So there's always this pressure on the writing team to write and record the albums. I mean, we'd be flown back from tours to do 10 hours in the studio and flown back and do a concert that night when we had to, because they want the albums out to keep the momentum. So it's exhausting. And then if you've got conflicts, you know, but ultimately what happened is we had a really bad coach crash. And this was the first time when that was real adversity. I mean, if you can Google the image of the coach. Second night of a tour, sellout tour. The next night we were meant to be at Wembley. We left
Newcastle, weren't you?
We're in Newcastle, and we were on our way back after the gig to the hotel. And we hit a lorry full of steel. There was roadworks, and they weren't very well signposted, and it was just they just hit. It just didn't work. I think our driver was actually sort of held at account, but it was to do with the roadworks. As it gone from a double lane to a single lane, it wasn't very well signposted. Anyway, Mike Nolan went through the window. Cheryl went through the window. She broke her back. Mike had a massive blood clot develop on his brain. Had major brain surgery. No, I had the last right tread over him. Tom, our keyboard player, the coach came in and hit his ribs. So the table of the coach went right through him. He wasn't expected to live. Saw him the other day, actually, did some vocal practice for us, bless him. You know, he had major problems. And we pulled through. I mean, Mike was basically kind of not disabled, but, you know, he had long-term damage up until he retired just last year. He's been remarkable how he's carried on.
Yeah.
And I had a head injury here, and literally you could draw a line down my body where this side of my body, I couldn't feel anything. The only thing I could move after a few days was the end of my little finger. So it was like a stroke, but it was heavy bruising from the impact that just, you know, I think this side of your brain controls that side of your body and vice versa. So that was a long recovery, and it took me a few years, if I'm completely honest. So I think there was like a symbolic end to the band there, and it was when I was in hospital, and the vicar had just left Mike, and you know it was all very down and down. We were like, I didn't think Mike would survive, and even if he did, would he ever recover? I couldn't see a future for the band, and I made the decision to leave the band because there'd been a lot of squabbling and personal squabblings within the management towards me as well, and I'd had enough of it, and I just thought, we're all nearly dead, and I'm getting these horrible messages sent back to me while I'm in a hospital bed and I can barely move. And it just crossed me. I just thought, that has just broken something that is inhuman, and I've got to get away from these people. It wasn't just the band, it was the people around it. Because I had to survive. I felt like it was a survival kind of instinct kicked in. So I made the decision to leave the band, probably when I was mentally very fragile, and I paid an enormous price financially. I had to sell my house to pay the legal bills, even though I won 13 lawsuits, half are with the national press and half are with the record company, because they weren't happy I left, and they wanted to damage my reputation for breaking the contract. And I'm not going to go into all the details of that because it's too long-winded and it's too messy. But that was a terrible time for me. I won all my cases, but I lost my house, which was my dream home, which I'd managed to buy in 1983. I thought I'd be living there now. You know, I bought it pre-auction, and I used to be painting radiators after I'd come back from tour and stuff. And I just thought, I want to keep this house. So I won everything, but lost everything. And therefore you kind of have a bit of a battle with the legal side of, the law is very expensive. So avoid it at all costs, even if you're right. That's my advice. So no, I mean, that was tough, and it was many years because I was literally homeless. I had to come home at 30. We'd sort of sleep on girlfriends' sofas, and mates would give me a mattress on the floor for a few years while I was trying to A, get well, and B, rebuild some kind of career, because I'd been so damaged by everything. So that took a long time. I got a publishing deal based on the songs that I'd written, and I got the publishing deal is sort of how I met my husband. So I was looking for a great guitarist, songwriter, and Dave had just won Guitarist of the Year. And I was introduced, and so my life changed when I met my husband, because we worked on albums, and I think that just lifted me out of what had been what I call my darker period, Wilderness years, I think I called it.
Wilderness years. That sounds like a singer, doesn't it? Wilderness years. The career of a pop star.
Yeah.
There's
So I
always
mean, I
that.
went from having a beautiful house in Kensington, which has lots of noughts at the end of it now, to literally mooching about in parks and identifying with tramps and sort of thinking, I'm not that far away from you. I did have parents to go back to, but that really was such a flip of rags to riches almost.
Yeah.
For over leaving the band essentially, and with hindsight I should have just stuck it out, but I don't think I was well enough at the time to stick it out. I had to recover. It took me a long time to recover, you know. So then roll forward. I mean, I released albums and I set up kids theatre schools. I ran 3 or 4 children's theatre schools, Aston Theatre Arts, taught thousands of kids from age 2 to 17, and I really enjoy and still miss teaching kids to sing and dance and act. It was just sort of, my mum had a little school and I just kind of developed something similar, hopefully a bit bigger, and that was like my day job. And we wanted to have kids, and I have a daughter, and so that was sort of, my life went in that direction for a while before I ever came back into the fold of what is now called the Fizz. But for a while we were called the original Bucks Fizz, when it was a TV show that put us back together. It was to sort of tell our story, and they did like a makeover on us. And then the girl that had replaced me left the band shortly after that, and Cheryl asked me to come back into the band.
How did you feel about going back into the band? And what year would that have been that you kind of reformed?
Well, the TV show was filmed in 08, and I think it was shown in 9. So it was about 2009 I went back. Well, you see, there've been a lot of lies and animosity said against me from the people that sued me, that put the band together. So I'm just on the phone, my daughter. So it was a bit frosty at first, particularly with Cheryl, because we hadn't spoken for 23 years.
You see Cheryl Baker, and she seems like the loveliest person ever. How could you fall out with her and not get on with her, sort of thing, you know? So on the outside, you're like, you know, you just never know what goes on there. So how did you kind of like for that relationship?
It was weird, because one thing I realised is, when you've gone through adversity and experiences like we had, which were massive highs and lows, you build a bond that no one else can share.
Yeah.
You know, it's like-minded people in a situation, or even it's a calamitous thing. You know, if you've been in an awful accident, there's something about the connection that's built through that experience. And I could never really talk to anyone about the band like I could with Mike and Cheryl. And there was a bit of us that just clicked, because we've been through so much, and we were there for years from the outset. And then I was hearing all the stories from when I left up to date, you know, because there was so much history and so much has gone on, and there's been, I think, about 15 versions of the band.
Yeah, it's a bit like...
Yeah, kind of, yes. A to Z of Fizz. But yeah, it's so we connected on that, and we were doing the TV show, and obviously the professional side of you kicks in and you just do the show. But it was lovely. It was really lovely, you know. So there's a love between us, and although Mike left last year, there's something that you can't really we didn't see eye to eye all the time, far from it. Cheryl and I were like, as she would say, chalk and cheese, because I was very quiet and withdrawn. I was 19, you know, and she was 27, 28, and had done a lot more and was very good at feeling comfortable chatting in crowds. And I was just a bit of a wallflower, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just it just took a little while, but we, you know, we got back. We had a couple of shows, we did them, and then it just sort of snowballed from there, because then there's 3 original members. And then sadly we had the next calamity, which is Bobby G's wife had managed to get the name Bucks Fizz when it had lapsed the trademark.
Right.
So this is another thing you're going to learn. If you own your trademark, own your name, get it registered, whether it's a copyright or whatever, get it all done. It's a couple of £100 with a lawyer, or you can do it yourself. And that's so important, because then you can, you know, it's like not owning your own name. So that has prevented us from earning a lot more and doing a lot more work, because we have to trade as the Fizz. So Bobby's third wife, who was about 6 when we won Eurovision, she owns the name Bucks Fizz, and we can't use it. So that was unfair, you know, but that's typifies what was going on with the band, because there was always the 2 camps.
What benefit is it to her,
it's just silly, you know.
Yeah, what benefits it to her, though? by owning that name and
I
not
actually
doing
think
anything
to
with it.
begin with, because they'd carried on, Bobby had carried on for quite a few years, about a decade,
Yeah.
without Cheryl and me in the band, that they then felt that they were Bucks Fizz, and I think they thought they would carry on being booked. But then there was 3 originals versus 1 original, and and it's a very different show. It didn't pay off for them, put it that way.
For me, but being totally honest, if you're going to do a comparison to ABBA and Bucks Fizz, you're just interested in the women. The women are like in but nobody cares about the guys.
Because you're a lad.
I just think that and people prefer the singers because you can replace the musician with somebody else. It's like if you got Queen, you can replace everyone else apart from Freddie Mercury. Like Bucks Fizz, people will remember you and Cheryl, and some of them might struggle with obviously you got the fans that know everyone's, but you're going to be the 2 that stand out. Same with the women in ABBA. There, you might say no, that's not true, but
Yeah, I
if you
get it.
if
Because
you,
they
it's like
kind of dress as the eye candy kind of thing, and we wore the mini skirts, let's face it.
like I remember back, yeah, back in the day with Blondie, and when they're at their peak, they're about to split up, and the band are wearing t-shirts saying Blondie is a band, but nobody really cares about the band members so much. They turn up to see Debbie Harry.
Yeah. I mean, I'm married to a musician, and I know how absolutely important the musicians are. And the whole thing
Yes.
would fall if it was just Blondie. It actually would. But it's
Yeah, of
because it's the
course.
songs they've created that's made her famous. So
Yeah,
actually, it's the other way round. But I get how it looks, and I agree
yeah.
with you.
If you've got like 3 former members of Bucks Fizz on stage in one side, and then there's 1 member the other side, people's going to go to the majority. Did you think there was ever a chance of like working it out so you could have the 4 original members again?
Funny because Radio 2 did a thing literally a week ago
Right.
about whether it would ever happen. And we actually were offered £1 million about 5 or 6 years ago by someone who was on the table, and it still didn't happen. I think it's just something that they're so passionate about holding on to the name and winning that they just can't let it go. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it will ever happen. And I know that some Radio 2 have just done a piece which was quite comical about it. I can send you the clip, but because it's just some things that are maybe lining up for us, which I can't really talk about at the minute. But it's sort of like I don't think it'll ever happen. I really don't. I can't see the bridges that could be built because I'm not sure it's just about money. I think it's something else other than that. Because £1 million would have been rather good, wouldn't it?
I think I'd get past most things to that.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of it's ego? Do you think that's a big part of it?
There was huge egos in our band, and there is in most bands. Everyone
Yeah.
has their own set of fans, and you delude yourself that it's all about you.
Really?
Yeah. It's the pop business. It's being in a pop star is different even to being a famous actress or actor. It's a different world. And it's, especially if you appeal to young kids, that they're screaming at you. And I think it does stuff to you, especially if you're young as well. I mean, I was 19. I was lucky I was grounded because of my parents being in showbiz.
Yeah.
And this, to me, this is just a job. But, you go, am I a bit special? Maybe you feel like, oh, maybe I'm a bit special. You're not, but
Yeah.
for a short bubble, you are to the kids, not to the world.
I mean, it's beyond my wildest dreams, but what's it like when you walk out on stage and you got thousands of people screaming your name and you're going to sing in front of them? I mean, what are you feeling there? Even now, all these years later, and you're still doing it then, and it looks like you're having an amazing time. I mean, what goes through your mind?
The bigger the crowd, the better. Do you know what? It's harder to perform in front of 100 people than it is to perform in front of 10,000 or 20,000. It's really weird. You just go and do your job. You just do your job. The most important thing we're thinking about is, can we hear ourselves? Because especially if you've got a live band, we always struggle with sound. So if you can hear yourself, so we have in-ear monitors, or the monitors are working, we've got a good sound guy, you live and die on your sound. So all we're actually thinking about is, can I pitch in tune? Can I hear the track? Can I hear the band? And that takes over the nerves, really, because you click into work mode. So you just go, oh, great, big audience. We haven't had to schlep to get this audience. They're just there. And it's like,
So you're not taking
fabulous.
you're just focusing on, is it probably not till you've come off stage, or maybe even like talking to like myself, you're going, yeah, do you know what, that is pretty good.
It is a bit like that. It
Yeah.
is after the event, or really at the end, if you've got them and they're going ballistic and they want more and they're screaming and they're saying, we want more, you know. We almost feel now, certainly certain, when you work out your acts right, you've got your set list right. If you don't have that cheering and we want more, you feel like you failed. But usually we get it. But it's just technical. Your brain just goes into, I can't sing in tune if I can't hear myself. And all I want to do is the show to be good. So technicalities, which people forget about when they're putting a show on, is everything to the artist. They don't even think about it. It doesn't even register. It's utterly important to us. So I just go, come here. Especially when there's four voices and a drummer behind you hitting it as hard, as loud as he possibly.
How do you feel now singing the songs from like the early 80s to now? Because your fan base, and the majority of them are going to be similar age to yourself, but the difference is that they were new out back in the day, but now they've got 40 odd years of memories attached to those. When I went to see the Eagles for about a third time, they say it's all about the memories, so there's so much attached to your songs for that audience. Do you ever sort of think about that when you're singing them?
Come up and they go, oh, I watched you at this gig and I was 9, you know, or it takes you back to, it's nostalgia. I think it's really important. It's comforting somehow, because it takes you back to a familiar time. And I think it's weird this, because nothing we know now, we don't know what's happening in the future. We know what happened before, and there's some kind of comfort in that how you negotiate stuff in your life, you know. So I think it's just that nostalgia clicks, because you're also with like-minded people that all love the same music, and there's literally a whole community of fans that come not just from the UK but from Europe. The other day we did one small little festival, which was at Cheryl's in her garden. She's got a big garden, fortunately. And people came from all over Europe and Scandinavia and stuff. And it's like, it's amazing, but they just connect with the song and the experience.
Yeah, I'll get that when I've got my 80s playlist on in the car, and there's certain, especially if you're in that mood, certain songs come on. I mean, I was playing some of the Bucks Fizz songs recently there, and you know, Camera Never Lies, Making Your Mind Up. But when you put Land of Make Believe on, it just takes you back. So I remember the video. I remember the music video. It's such a good music video there as well, and I just remember it being on back in the day. It just sort of takes you right back there. So I get the nostalgia side of it. With yourself, obviously, you guys at the Fizz, you've got 2 new guys in there as well. What's the plans for you? You're just going to keep doing what you're doing for the foreseeable future? Because it looks like you're having so much fun.
Matthew Pateman and Nick Major, they're brilliant. They were in different pop groups from the 90s. They were both in boy bands. Right. So they're very, very experienced. They've got great voices. They're a breath of fresh air, because Mike wanted to retire. And really, Mike, literally after the lockdowns, Mike didn't want to come back. And we've been dragging him around. So it was quite tough. So it's been a real flip. And it's just great, because they breathe life into the songs and the enthusiasm. We've actually had a film crew filming us for nearly a year. So there's a documentary in the works about the whole process. So yeah, watch this space for that. I don't know who will show it, I don't know where it'll end up yet. A bit like they did a profile on Wham, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's happening for us. And there's lots of things in the pipeline for more gigs, and we're getting loads of inquiries. We're still filling our feet, because, you know, I mean, we've struck gold with the boys, because we had a lot of people audition and sort of want to join, and they were just so perfect and really just stood out. So yeah, there's a lot in the works with that. There'll be new music, there'll be more concerts. It's all going in the right direction, and obviously the documentary hopefully will help to relaunch us.
That's great. And you can just see with the clips, you can see that you genuinely having so much fun. How would you compare what you're doing now on stage now with all the tours that you're doing compared to back in the day? Is it completely different? Is it the same?
Well, back in the day, you were selling records.
Yeah.
When records were worth selling. So this is something I'm really passionate about. I mean, the likes of Spotify, you get 0.001 penny per stream. Great for the people, terrible for the artists.
Yeah.
And I hope that changes one day. Back then, if someone heard your song, £1 had been exchanged, or at least 50p. Yeah, because a single was two or three pounds. An album was £5 or £6, £4 or £5.
Yeah.
So if you wanted a single, the cheapest, you could go to Woolworths and buy it for £1.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
then the record company would take half of it. There'd be about 50p in the pot. And there'd be about, not that we got it, because we had a terrible record deal, but someone made physical money out of that. I mean, I think the record companies are now involved with all the downloads, and they still make a lot of money out of it, but it doesn't trickle down to the artists. So we were there, selling the records was driving the whole machine then. It was all about promoting the albums, TV tours, traveling all over Europe was TV tours to promote us on TV shows primarily, more than gigging tours, which were primarily in the UK. So it's just different. Now we can pick and choose what we want to do.
Yeah.
And the industry is entirely different, wildly different. So yeah.
Yeah. How do you compare the industry today to what it was? I'll be honest, I'm sort of stuck no further past probably the mid-90s. All my music 60s, 70s and 80s predominantly, because it's just not my scene. How do you find it compared to sort of late 70s, early 80s to like now?
I think in the last 5 years, there's been some great new artists, particularly girl artists. The 90s left me cold and the early 2000s left me cold musically. But there's so much to choose from. It's a world of choice, whereas before we had 2 TV channels or 3 TV channels. We had certain radio shows. We have millions and millions of percent more to choose from. I think people just take music for granted, whereas it was quite a valuable thing back then. Yeah, it's not rare anymore. It's everywhere. So that's changed everything. And so many other businesses.
And also with the music, it wasn't really what the late 70s, early 80s that music videos started coming in, the likes of like Buggles and people like that. Yeah, so whereas nowadays, any music, any song that you hear, you're expecting some big video with it. Would you prefer to start out now or when you did?
It wouldn't have happened that we wouldn't happen now. I think without Eurovision, we wouldn't have been anywhere. We wouldn't have happened at all. We do owe it to Eurovision, which is why we'll always support it, because it's a global platform. It's a springboard, and you either sink or swim. So yeah, I think it was that. It's a very different world. My husband's just released an album. He's bringing you back to the ADHD video, which I wanted to talk about. So my husband has written an album. The project is called Return of the Human. The album went live just over a week ago. And there's a song on there called ADHD, which I shot the video with a friend of mine, sort of co-directed and produced it with Simon Atterbury. And it's basically, my husband's name's David Colquhoun, and John Vincent is the other co-writer, and it's his story about his battles with ADHD. I think people may find it really helpful because, a lot of people go, what's this, another thing with ADHD and all these letters, and people, sort of older people, don't understand it. Yeah. But John built an empire with the restaurant chain Leon, which is fast food, health food, mostly in central London. And he was just talking to Dave. John has primarily written lyrics on this album. My husband's the musician and the producer and sort of mixed it all and everything, and we've got some great musicians and backing people on there, but that's it. So John was just talking about his battles with ADHD one day, and Dave just turned the mic on and said, tell me. So it's John's account of how it makes him feel, and we just shot it around London and stuff primarily. And have a look at the video, because I think it might be quite helpful for people to see someone who's been that successful, who's actually now got a CBE, because he did a lot of great things during COVID, feeding the NHS and kids and stuff, and how he's managed to cope with it. Because he's very not scattered, but he changes from one project to the next. It's classic ADHD. His focus is multiple. So and it was obvious working with him. But I think the video's come out really well, and hopefully people will appreciate it, because it's something you live with.
Yeah, I mean, as a therapist, I've got so many clients that have come to me that have got ADHD. And the variations of what it might be going through. And as you know, it's only fairly recent times that it's coming into like a bit more, not mainstream, but people will get more familiar and understanding it a little bit better. But a lot of people still don't know what it is. Yeah. A lot of people think ADHD, does it mean this? Does it mean that? So I think if you can bring it out in music, that's going to make a massive difference there as well. So I think
it's a really unusual track. And I've got to say, I don't listen to many albums, but it's not just because it's my husband's and I've heard it being played in the house for a year now, in all the different stages of it being put together. But it's a very good album. I think it's a classic album. There's some great songs on there. We've got a lovely solo from Rick Wakeman. I don't know whether you remember him from Sanderson is she's one of the main singers on the Strictly band. She does a lot of the backing vocals. I've done some bits on the album. Even my daughter's sung on the album. So it's like it's a great project. But I think that the door opener for me has been the ADHD message, you know, John's message. So yeah, I'd love people to go and have a look at that video. It's on YouTube, and maybe we can put a link to it.
That will that I will get that added into the description there as well, and even get that at the start of the actual podcast episode there as well. I can certainly do that. It sounds brilliant. I think it's going to make a difference to a lot of people there, because a lot of people don't understand the ADHD, and the more they get familiar with it, the more they understand it, the more confident they're going to get. And if you're getting it through music, then it's only a really, really good thing. And it's good music as well.
One of the things I learned when I was running my theatre school, because you either get kids to come to the school that were really outgoing and natural performers, or you get the very reclusive, shy kids. And it was helpful in some sense that they had a common interest. So it was okay to enjoy singing or dancing. And I think what the school was really good at is bringing the kids who were underconfident up to sort of normality in a way. But I learned, I've seen over the years, because obviously I shut my school in 2013 when I went back into the band, and I just couldn't do the two. It ran for about 12 years. And so some of the kids that I noticed were different then, even when they were in the primary age, they've now come out with different diagnoses and different issues. One had an eating disorder, a few with ADHD, and you see it as a child. You see they're battling with something. So if I opened a school now, I would think I would see that a lot earlier, because I've had the benefit of sort of they're now in their 20s, you know, and I can sort of see what happened, what that meant. So that was interesting to realise.
I think it would be more noticeable nowadays. When I look back to when I was at school, and there's kids there that had ADHD, and nobody would have even known what that was there as well. So it's good that it's coming out, and if we can get that album promoted in any way possible, absolutely.
That's great.
Jay, thank you so much endlessly for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to come on the podcast there. I really appreciate talking to you. I could talk to you for absolutely hours. Just ask you lots of music questions as well. But thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.